There we go. Good morning. That was a big good morning Vietnam there, wasn't it? Actually, I should. Hello there, everybody. Good morning to you, and hello to the wonderful Louise of STL Auctions. How are you, Louise?
I'm good, thank you. I kind of feel like I've blinked and it's Wednesday, but apart from that, I'm good.
You're looking resplendent there in your Jerry Maguire outfit. I'm
Thank you.
enjoying that. That's
Good.
absolutely fantastic. Good stuff. So, so you're obviously like most of us now got the work-life balance sorted.
You know what? I think it constantly needs a tweak, doesn't it? And you go through phases of just being on it like a car bonnet, and I'm super organised and loving life in my home office, and then rocking back and forth, going stir crazy, going get me out of here. So it's a fine line between getting it right and allowing to fail miserably ill in the same breath. So
Let's just kick off with that to start off with. I mean, I think one interesting angle we've been talking to businesses is that is how they actually embraced and adapted to the lockdown there. I think you were obviously STO were at the forefront, weren't you, in terms of being very quick to pivot and change there. Do you want to give us a clue as to how an organisation as big as STL actually managed to deal with this whole horrible scene?
yeah, you know what? A lot of it is because of from foresight for some other clever people in our world, and then the ability at a sort of a sort of more macro business level for us to get our people engaged in a different way of working really quickly. So some of it was our technological ability to sort of say we had cloud-based phone systems, and we were already, from an auctions point of view, already had led the way years ago, even in terms of live streaming auctions, never mind online auctions. So that's something that we were able to switch to really quickly. I
Yeah.
think the biggest change, is more for a different way of people working, and our people were used to that community, and open working spaces, and a free lunch and somewhere to go and stretch your legs and get a
Yeah.
coffee and all of that sort of interaction. So we again, we got some bright people that were able to really embrace a different way of working. And honest God, the first sort of Zoom quizzes or, Teams quizzes that we started to do to try and make people feel part of something in their own front rooms, it was massive. But from an auction perspective, as I say, it was a quick switch. It really was. So we
Yeah.
was literally one day you're all working from an office, the next minute everybody's, with headsets on, working through their laptops, and all our systems supported it. So we were lucky, as I say, that we had the foresight, and I will salute Warren in who runs our IT, because he led us down that path long ago. And again, the foresight that we had from an auctions point of view, that even though we had established rooms, if you like, a ballroom auctions in the sort of traditional way that people
Yeah.
would have seen an auction, we were still live streaming them. So people, a year ago could have watched them on the internet had they chose to do so. And that isn't just about us being able to be on Homes Under the Hammer. It's a much broader position of that. Again, Andy Parker, who's our MD and auctioneer, we've always ran proxy bids, we've always had internet bids, we've always had that kind of functionality. But by God, you quickly get better at it, because managing the remote bids was huge. Of just being able to get people processed through AML checks, and all of the compliance element to us as an auction business is massive. It's not
Yeah.
really my bag, I'll be honest with you,
Yeah.
but I have, we have to trust that there's lots of other people behind us making sure that everything is done correctly. Because one of our big things, and it's not one of a that we go into light-hearted, and that is the integrity of what we do.
Yeah.
So you know what, to run that live streamed auction, it had to have some integrity. It can't just be, somebody, with a couple of screens hoping it works. We had to have the infrastructure behind us so that we knew what telephone bids we had, we knew what proxy bids there were, we knew who was, Andy had to slow down that auction pace, because you need people on internet on a remote bid to be able to catch up. Whereas before it was stick a paddle in the air and you're all right. So it's those nuances, and we just, I've got incredibly humbled by the efforts that people have put in, and how then, you suddenly go from, in the last, we're running monthly virtual national auctions now, and they are truly national. There's they really are. So we've taken down some geographical boundaries that we had before, because people would have wanted to have gone in that room or that room before.
Just talk to us about how it's changed from the obviously the physical to the digital. What sort of numbers would you have had previously at those auction events, and what are you getting now when it's going on in a more digital format?
Well, I mean, the reality of it is far more people watched our live auction, and the end of the month, and will do again at the end of this month, than we would have ever been able to got into any of our venues. And we've got some big venues that, that you would have, easily got 1,000 people in, on some big sales. And the difference is that there's a level of qualification that goes into somebody now to register to bid. That's the difference. So, you do need to know that they are, that we've done all the right relevant checks on them as bidders, and then we're able to then go forward. Now, before, you would have had lots of people that would have gone along with a bidder or to sat with a bidder, and you wouldn't have necessarily known in that ballroom environment whether you had a live bidder or not, other than the fact that they would have had a paddle. And the reality of it is, and don't get me wrong, that the alchemy and the energy that comes out of that room environment is what we are constantly trying to recreate, and none of us know at what point we'll be able to go back to that, but it is our role.
Any clues at all on that? Any clues at all?
No.
Okay.
And saying that, I know there's been what we call a chattel sale, a fine art sale that was conducted with social distancing, and it's just weird. It just feels very strange. And the whole point of that is that, some people want to be able to be, more hidden, dare I say, than sort of obviously sat in your little 2-meter box of going, I can bid. And for me, there's something about the convenience of the way we're doing it. So say it like in Pride Park, where we would have run a SDL Graham Penny sale for years. It's a busy sale room. There's 500 paddles, of bidding paddles that people can register. We never ran out of we never ran out of those paddles. It's an interesting point that we never ran out of those paddles. And some people keep them as souvenirs, which I always find is, interesting. So I think we need to send people somebody who win a bid, so send them a paddle so that they feel they've got something, because it is exciting. It is, and that's what we don't want to lose, that excitement of winning a property at auction, and we create that online as well. So that's the, for us, honestly, I feel we were very blessed with the way we were able to adapt, and the fact that we will run a national live virtual auction every month, and then we have throughout the month ongoing online sales as well. And again, they vary in the type of auction that they are, and that sometimes they are unconditional, which at the fall of the hammer, you exchange contracts straight away. And some of them are conditional, where the buyer pays a reservation fee and has longer to exchange and complete. And the reason we'll do a conditional sale, it is really confusing for some people. And the simplest way to describe it for me is that if we run a conditional sale, it opens the buyer market up more, because you've got longer time to get lending in place. So we see a lot more people get lending with a conditional sale than we would an unconditional sale. And that's purely because on an unconditional sale, you've exchanged contracts. So you may still pay a buyer reservation fee, but you've still got longer, in a conditional sale than you would an unconditional. And that's really the difference. It doesn't matter about the type of stock or anything like that. It's what's best. And sometimes certain properties will think, actually, we need to open the market up a bit more. So we would recommend it go down a conditional route. Or, you know what, there's a reason that vendor or seller needs that security of an exchange on the hammer, and it's priced to reflect that, and it will go. So we'll do it that way. So again, and we can do that online, in our virtual studio. It really doesn't matter. We do not care, other than it's what's the best advice for that vendor and the best way to sell that property. That's what drives it.
Talk us through just briefly there. You talk about obviously how you're able to advise. Obviously, there are other auction services out there as well that kind of have a fully outsourced operation there. How do you guys differ in that respect? I think you guys really encourage the businesses to have their own auction departments, don't you?
Absolutely. For me, one size does not suit every business that we partner with. So we have a really strong and buoyant network of estate agents who refer properties to auction through us and sell through auction with us. And I don't want to over prescribe what their auction department looks like, because it's their local community, it's their business. I've talked about this when, I launched this business with SDL Auctions on the back of a really successful, credible room sale business that had been going for years. And it was very much, we're looking after your gold dust. So if you're going to let us have one of your clients to sell their property for, then you know what? We need to do it the way you're comfortable with. Now, it's our job to educate. It's our job to make sure that we extend the reach of auctions, because I think it's more suitable than a lot of people think. And when we look at estate agents, that in many cases, they will, because they're used to doing a private treaty sale process, they often don't bring it up until it's not sold,
So it's like
or until the motivation changes.
it's the last chance saloon traditionally, isn't it? Is
Yeah,
that,
yeah. And that's the point of going, it becomes that sort of, you know, death, divorce and desperation. And actually, it can be for the front end conversations. I would urge every one of our estate agents out there, whether they partner with SDL or anybody else, is talk to your vendors about it as a possibility at a market appraisal, because you're sowing the seeds for what you may do further down the road if they've pricing is slightly unrealistic, it doesn't get the right amount of views, or indeed their motivation changes. There's so many examples when you might start off with a view of going, well, I'm going to put it on the market for that. And, life gets in the way. Stuff gets in the way. It's not always bad stuff as well, by the way. It could be, I don't want this headache anymore and I want it gone and sorted. So I'm suddenly going to be more realistic on my price. And for me, one of the things that I want, it's not quite being the savior of estate agents. There's no silver bullet. This isn't going to miraculously solve our problems in the private treaty market. But you know what? It's for a conversation far more often than people realize. And we talk about not assuming, because you know what, I don't want to tell you really quite how desperate I am to sell this property or my personal circumstances. I want you as my estate agent to believe that I'm not desperate. I'm holding out for the best price possible, and I think my property's worth more than somebody else's down the road, or whatever those perceptions are. So actually, for me to be really vulnerable to you, to say, you know what, if I haven't got the money in the bank by September the 10th, I'm screwed. That's a tough conversation for somebody to have. It really is. So my mission is, let's get estate agents sowing those seeds early doors. So and again, for me, it's a win-win for the vendor, and it wins for the estate agent too, because so often those unrealistic expectations that vendors have suddenly mean that they withdraw and they go on the market with somebody else. And I
Yeah.
think that's such a shame, because ultimately, if they were more realistic about the pricing at the outset, or they felt able to go, my reality's changed a bit here,
Yeah.
I've suddenly got a bit more, because that is the point. This is, auctions is not for every vendor. It really isn't. Now, you notice I say it's not about the property. It is fundamentally about the vendor's circumstances. Anybody that's seen one of our sales or wants to have a look at the type of stock we have, yes, of course, we've got lots of what I class as bread and butter auction stock, and stuff that will sell every day, in that style and type. But we've got some really interesting different properties that you would never look at and go, well, that's an auction property. But it's
has the type of property that's come to auction dramatically changed over the last few years? Has it moved away from that traditional kind of two up, two down? The perception, the dilapidated property. Are you seeing a lot more sort of those sorts of properties you just talked about there?
I think we see more, but not a lot more. So
Okay.
it's a bit like turning a tanker. It's that little people's perception, understanding of what auction properties could look like, and a part of that has grown because estate agents are engaging in auctions more, and that's great. It really is. And let's have it right. That's why I say the auction is not for everybody. There will be a point where you go, who's going to buy it and why? There has to be something in it. There has to be some capital gain or an investment opportunity that forces people down a route that says, I'm going to commit more seriously to this property than if I bought something on the private treaty market, where 3 or 4 months down the road, I can pull out. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I've lost nothing. So to take people down a more committed route, there has to be something in it, some value, some opportunity. So as I say, this is never going to be, suddenly an opportunity for 90% of estate agent stock to go down auction route. If it's a conversation for 10 to 20%, then happy days. That's great, because that means that those transactions will move through that estate agency's business and deliver money to them very crucially at this moment in time. And for the vendor, it means they've got the security of that sale at that point. And that's it's so important.
And you talk about there, though, that it's not never going to be like 80-90% of the transactional market, but actually one of the big success stories, not least to the likes of yourselves and the other.
Have you gone on me, Simon? So if Simon has disappeared, I can answer, but I don't want to talk over him, so I'm going to sit quietly until he tells me to come back. There's no Simon Whale. I could be flying solo. This would be all right. But I miss him. So I'm going to talk about, I think Simon was going to mention, because he likes his Australian friends, doesn't he? And probably, 50% of the Australian marketplace transacts at auction. And they do it on their front lawns in most cases, where, you'll get an auctioneer come and the neighbours and everybody that's interested will have, an on-lawn sale. And I think, there's room for us to do far more in the United Kingdom regarding auctions, but we'd need a lot more nicer weather to be able to guarantee that I've got an auctioneer and all my people. Oh, I'd come back. I started talking, by the way, because I didn't know whether you were there.
That's the joys of ropey hotel. What's it? Broadband. Thank you for that singer song, Mark Bevan. That's fantastic. Thank you. Our kind watchers and listeners are very. If there's somebody, anybody who knows how to carry on talking, it's you, Lou. So thank you for that.
I'll take that.
We'll get back to just a couple of the points you were talking on, because I'm interested there. First of all, let's say hello to obviously our dear friend Amy. Hello, Amy, out there.
Hi, Amy.
And then man of the moment, Mr. Gary Barker.
Hey.
Obviously with a bit of time on his hand now. Louise, interested to understand how you believe digital auctions will change the way agents look to engage, work with vendors, buyers. I mean, you've touched on a little bit there, but do you want to elaborate on that whole digital thing, where you think that will go? Because as we said, it's never going to be 80-90%, but it's not got a glass ceiling in sight just yet, has it?
No. Well, it's got a long way to go. Auctions equate to just a little bit over 2% of the transactional marketplace. So yeah, it's got a hell of a way to go. And digitally, one of the things I love about this process from an auction point of view is it's so transparent. And that's the bit that's very powerful when you start to look at, auctions isn't just for the end of the market that says it's a dilapidated property. It can also be very powerful for the most desired properties. And when we're in a position where stock is at a shortage, and dare I say the table manners have changed about how people go about buying property, then there's something very powerful about there being a very open and transactionally clear way of doing business. So there's no when you look at what happens in a best and finals or a sealed bid world in estate agency, it's fraught with danger, because as the estate agent, and I've done them, you become the most unpopular person in the land, because the person, say you've got 5 people winning that, trying to bid on that very sought after property on that beautiful street that everybody wants, with the best schools and the best opportunities, then the person that wins that property thinks they've paid too much for it. The 4 other people that didn't get it think you've told them something that you didn't tell you. And actually, from the vendor's point of view, guess what? You can qualify the heck out of that potential buyer, and they be the winner, but they can still pull out 3 or 4 months down the road, and you are screwed. There's, and I know we talk about there's opportunities for reservation contracts and everything, but I stand by the reason we have such a low fall through rate is because there's some hurt money. There is some commitment. And so I don't apologize for that. I think we need to get the balance right, that buyers' fees do not stop people buying properties or become a barrier to sale. And that goes back to, let's be sensible and pragmatic about where we apply those buyers' fees and how we apply them. But ultimately, they're there for a really good reason. And that means that you as a buyer are committed to the sale. So going back to Gary's point, I think that transparent way of seeing what somebody else is prepared to bid just gives everybody else more confidence, in the process. And it means that there aren't under, different ways and different deals. One of the things as a business, we are championing on from a compliance and it's about integrity of what we do, and it can take just one bad egg, just as it can do, or one bad apple, egg, whatever, which way it is.
I will
Anyway,
take that analogy all day long.
It's the same reason that estate agents can occasionally, get that reputation on the Morrow scale of not being as reputationally sound as they could be, is because 1 or 2 of them did something dodgy. And one of the things that, I know is a champion from Andy Parker's point of view is to say, that man's got more integrity than most people I'd ever meet, and as far as how he runs and conducts his auctions. So any practices that does not suit at that level of integrity for us is some systemic risk for us as an industry. So how many times people are told to read the legal packs, make sure there are not costs that are associated with that you don't know about, you
Yeah.
know. And the way we do our buyers fees, there's nothing hidden, it's very transparent. And it only takes one or two slightly funky positions to say buying at auctions isn't safe. But actually, you know what, we need to champion that, to say,
Mm.
read those special conditions. We will have and do reject any vendors that want to put properties in with unreasonable conditions within those legal packs. And
Okay.
again, why it transacts so much easier is because a big chunk of that legal conveyancing work is done at the front end. And
Yeah.
again, that's where that digital advancement, and it doesn't matter whether you're selling a property in our sort of online eBay style, sale process, or a virtual sale once a month. All of that technology and that digital ability to know what you're buying, see what you're buying, understand what you're buying, and the history of it is all there, and it's there for everybody to see. So and we're all interested in making everything more transparent, and championing the integrity of estate agents and auctioneers across the country,
Well,
really.
transparency can only ever improve and help a market, can't it? I mean, I'm not sure of one where more transparency has ever hindered it.
Mm.
One thing I'm really interested about on the digital side, and actually just this move, albeit maybe temporary, away from traditional auction rooms, is we've discussed offline actually how those rooms can be a bit alpha male-ish. They can encourage, almost put women off from going to there. Does obviously that whole digital thing that liberates them then to get involved in a way that they haven't been before?
It does. It liberates. I mean, we saw a stark change in the demographic of people engaging in our auctions. There's far more women in a virtual world than there ever is in a room environment. Um, and And for me, that's twofold. It's not just a gender position, it's just making it easy for people to do it. I always used to talk when we launched in our sort of online sales, and it's not to say one thing's bad and one thing's good. It's different. It can be a different thing, and it depends on people's timescales, and it depends on the process that they want to work with. So, we'll have some people that'll only ever want to sell in what they perceive a kind of a live room or auctioneer-led environment. And then some people are quite happy with that eBay kind of online sale process. And for our job is to facilitate people choice. That's what I think, and that's our vendors' choice and our partner agents' choice as well. So if they want to do it a certain way, we will facilitate that, because for my money, it's their auction business, it's their clients, and it should be done in their way. Now we've got our role is to educate, train, expand their proposition. So if they're only offering one route, then let's expose the marketplace to there's more than one way to get from A to B, and that's really important. But ultimately, you know what, it's about giving vendor choice, and that's about, there's another choice as well from private treaty. There really is, and I think anybody that's experienced a fall through or a chain, or God alive, it is fraught with danger. So if you need that security, then you've got to have it. And nothing's going to change anytime soon on that. I know everybody wants to think that we're boycotting and lobbying the government to say that it helped the private treaty process, but we have a new housing minister every 5 minutes. So who the hell's going to get that over the line? So we've got to do this ourselves. This is down to us to educate the marketplace, to say, you know what, this is a route that could be more suitable for more people than you perhaps realize today. So at the very least, have the conversation, because if you're not, some other bugger will, somebody else will.
For me, it's always just been the kryptonite against the. Okay, it's probably a bit unfair just to blame the online agents, but certainly cut price agents is, where you've got that sort of vendor who will insist on knowing the price before they invite you out, despite you wanting to avoid it, and to be able to obviously have different options of auction available to you does just give you the ability to compete with those guys, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, there's a simple question that I would ask a vendor, if I was solely pitching from think about auctions, is would you like the best price available in today's marketplace, or with the security of a non-refundable buyer's fee with no estate agency fees to pay?
Yeah, yeah. It's
Tricky one to say no to, isn't it? You know, I mean, I know I'm a salesperson, and it's in my DNA to say this is great,
yeah.
but you know, it is, and
But
that's
then
the point of going,
your foot's in the door
what do you
then,
price
isn't it?
it? Yeah, what price? What do you charge us? Well, you know what? Depending on your circumstances and your property, our costs genuinely start at nothing.
Yeah, that's
So
brilliant. I mean,
if it's not an instruction winner, it should be. And I know there are certain marketplaces that, you know, I am the last person that would advocate being the cheapest agent in town, by the way. You know,
mhm,
no, no, no. I'm looking at how we add value, and you as an estate agent out there gets paid commensurate with the work you do. Because
yeah,
I think all we've done is commoditize the hell out of this process.
yeah,
And actually, there are still people who work their socks off to get those sales, and the estate agency work incredibly hard for maybe a prize 4 to 6 months down the road. Oh,
yeah,
and guess what? If anything goes wrong, you're the responsible one. I'm going to ditch you and go to the other agent down the road. Well, it wasn't their fault. It wasn't
yeah.
their fault.
I've seen your choice of white wine. I know you don't go for the cheapest options.
Never.
Um, Emily, our Emily's just jumped in with a quick question for you. A quite interesting one. I am. How does the performance of digital auctions compare to auction rooms themselves?
You know
Is there?
what? It's Say that again. Sorry, I missed the last bit then. Sorry.
I just say, is there a difference in that, or are
Yeah,
they?
there is. And
Okay.
there is, and there's a reason why. So we see a higher sale rate in that sort of virtual room or live virtual sale than we do in the online space. And that is purely because sometimes to take something to a live environment, you've got to be really sure of those values and really sure of the appetite. So we'll typically see, you know, an 80% sale rate in that environment. In an online world, you can be more flexible about what you price things at. So it may not be quite as attractive as it might be in a room environment, which really you've got one chance to sell it.
Yeah.
Whereas we've got a few bites at the cherry, if you like. God, my analogies are all over the shop, aren't they? A few bites at the cherry and the apple and anything else. You've got a few.
By the way, all of these are fruit, which I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, we know that, unless it's dipped in chocolate. Yeah. You've got a few goes. So what we can do is that we can take something through an online cycle, and that's part of that is to educate the vendor of what the true value of that property is.
Yeah,
So if it is valued right, it will sell. It will
yeah.
sell every time. You know, you don't get properties that don't sell when they're priced right, when they're priced to sale. So there
Because
is some time. So we typically see 65 to 70% in the pure online sale space and 80% in our room environment.
yeah.
And
So
when
then,
I say room, it's, you know,
I mean, in any market, obviously, to get competitive bidding kind of from below and bidding is the absolute key, isn't it? And I can imagine sometimes getting the vendor to set a reserve price that is realistic to get that going can
yeah,
be the hard thing, because they automatically will focus in on that and think, well, we
yeah,
want more than that.
yeah.
But that's all the education process, then,
And
isn't it?
that's also why it's not for everyone.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
you know, it's part of understanding a risk profile of somebody, of going, you know, the risk is it may sell for the reserve. There's no risk of it selling below the reserve.
Yeah,
And the point is for us is that we, from an auction point of view, will pull people out of the darkness, because we will start marketing that property a guide price that will be significantly less than that reserve price. So
yeah,
it will be up to 10% less. So
yeah,
if somebody wants, you know, I'll keep the math simple. If somebody wants 100, you know, their absolute bottom line is 100 grand, and we
yeah,
flex that muscle a few times with them, you know, and they might tell the estate agent that they absolutely can't take anything less than 110, and then suddenly you go, but if you were able to do this, or actually we've suddenly got an offer, then it becomes 100. So we
mm,
set the reserve, and then we start marketing at £90,000, and then we're suddenly got more people interested in than if you ever marketed it 120 in private treaty. So and it is the old adage that says more people we can get to look at it, the more people we can get interested, the more offers means the more sales we'll get.
How many on average do you have competing? Are you able to look at averages like that? And I'm interested as well as, the average bidders and underbidders you have on a particular one, but does it also, the number of bidders differ geographically?
You know what? I don't know that MI, but we'll have it. Somebody will have it. And you know what? We only need one or two. That's the whole point of this, because the point is that we need to get it up to the reserve, and then it's about driving the price. I mean, our average in our last auction over reserve was, I think the last one was 17%, but we've had over 25%. So, on an average, we will get over the reserve, but the client has to be happy. We have to be able to sleep at night that if it sells at the reserve, they're not, rocking back and forth in a corner. It's got to be good news still. It's selling at the reserve. And when you get that magic right and the property's got that level of interest and that hook that says who's going to buy it and why, and more people are then interested in it, then it becomes, that wonderful moment where you see it, oh my God, it's going over and over and over. And whether that's, Andy keeps going for a lot longer and he works a hell of a lot harder for one lot than it might do. We've got circumstances where we've had, over 100 bids, on a property from an online point of view that's just kept going, and the way our systems work, it just ticks it on so that everybody gets another 30 seconds to come back and bid, so it doesn't mean that it just stops.
That's how the process works then, just understanding that. So obviously you can't like with eBay, you've got to have obviously
there's no bot.
But then it just keeps it going. But you've got is it half a minute, did you say?
Yeah.
So time to think about whether you want to do it, but not enough time that it starts making it all awkward.
Yeah, okay. Exactly. You don't want to leave people hanging, and it's around getting that pace right. And I know, again, I am biased, but when I look at Andy Parker as an auctioneer, and Rory as well in their level of experience that we work to, that is a skill. It's not a skill I have. It's not a skill very many people have that can keep that energy up, can keep that competitive bidding, but keep it entertaining as well, dare I say. It has to be something that's worth watching, but isn't painful. And I think that's the thing that we've, one of the things that we've done best, and that's largely on him. That's largely on him, to be honest with you.
I have to stay away from auctions because they are my kryptonite. I just, if you give me a charity auction, a bottle of wine will go for far more than it ever should do. How important is it? I guess that if you're working with, and people have their own auction departments, they develop, as you're just talking about there with yours, they develop their own personality. How important do you think that is? Again,
I think it's the crucial part because it has to be authentic. So it is for us to, that partnership that we talk about with an estate agent, you deal from a supplier and the assessment of the different types of estate agencies you work for and their different marketplaces. I can have a very high end agent, in Abersock or London, will have a very different profile to somebody based in, Doncaster or the West Midlands or wherever. So, and again, there's different profiles of businesses within that geography. So it is, so a lot of, like we touched on that 0%, it could, your fees could be nothing. That's not going to be something that, a fine and country business is going to be wanting to champion, that's looking at a higher end marketplace. So it's actually finding your voice as an estate agent in the auction platform and the auction arena. And thinking as an agent, thinking I don't have auction stock is not the right approach, because everybody has auction stock. Everybody has a community that could sell at auction.
Can you help educate the agents on that in terms of that's SDL's part of SDL's services? Look, this is okay.
And it's
And
giving them some choice about how they market their business. We've said with any new partners as well now with Kerfuffle that we will create a microsite for them,
yeah,
and we'll do a set of brochures, but there's some choices in that. Whether you want a certain looking chimney pot or a certain, there are ways. Anybody that looked at our Knight Frank auction that we did, which
yeah,
was all very high end properties in London and the south, and with significant values. And again, that's because the barriers that we had before as a community of that property needs to be in a local sale doesn't exist anymore.
yeah,
There is no local sale. Those
yeah.
rooms are shut down.
Just is the I mean, you obviously you spoke about one of the biggest names in the business there. Do you think that the top end is where we spoke about that there's no glass ceiling anywhere, but do you think the top end of the marketplace is where auctions has still got some way to go?
I think we have such a small proportion of the transactional market that I think it's got room at all parts of the marketplace. There's it's more typical, as you say, your two up, two down, buy to let kind of environment. It'll be well established in certain places, whether, you know, other auction businesses are more established in certain areas, and it will be down to perhaps, if you take an example of, Clive Emerson's business in Kent. They've got a long established, rooming auction environment there. So, that's something that there's been accepted. Whether there's, there's something that a very high end that says, what, they want security of sale just as much as anybody else. And I think we can't prescribe now what that transaction needs to look like. So we've got to offer that choice. So it sounds a bit like I'm trying to go, I want a bit of everything, but I think it's available for us to grow the marketplace in the sort of
Yeah,
slightly more exclusive and more expensive property parts, where it does become, a very transparent sealed bid environment, where you guess what, if it's sold conditionally, that you are going to complete an exchange and complete within 56 days. Or if you sell unconditionally, that it will complete within 28 days. And you
yeah,
know what? I don't care whether you got £4.50 or £4,500,000. Sometimes you will want that security of knowing that's happening. Now, that
yeah,
might cost you something in the value, or it might, there's always a trade off.
yeah.
But sometimes, depending on what that client's circumstances are, that might be that's relevant. So all I want is us to not assume that one way is the right way. That
Exactly. You've said a
that's
number of times, haven't you? Flexibility is the key
yeah.
here, and being able to do it. You spoke about security there, though, and Emma's asked a follow-up question there that just says, "How do you stop that online version being gamed?" I mean, do you, I guess this is about people, just registering and and then not being kosher, being able to go ahead. What checks do you have to have in place to stop that? Obviously, because it only takes one, doesn't it, to throw the whole thing out of kilter?
Well, the thing is that we do have to go through, just as we would, we go through the whole process of registering bidders. So, and taking their funds, if that's appropriate. So it depends on the route of the sale. But it won't get to exchange or reservation contracts unless they pay. So,
Yeah.
it becomes a game nobody can play unless they want to put some money on the line. So I think that stops it. And again, that transparent way of saying, anybody can bid up to the reserve, and potentially that might be an offer. You might be able to then say to that vendor, it didn't meet your reserve. However, we do a lot of post sales that suddenly it might just not have got to that reserve.
Yeah.
So, you'll see the auctioneer going, "Oh, I'm really sorry. We're very close. It's not quite where we need to be." But, we've got a great post-sales team, and one of the most tenacious, deal makers in the industry, So we've got a team of people there will tie up deals post-auction. So whatever happens
Is
live.
that, is that dealing with both the lead bidder? Do you give them the advantage and then go to the underbidders? So, or
It will be, you'll end up with a sort of a post-auction bidding environment that says,
Okay.
actually, who's going to put, and it is one of who's going to commit and what is the vendor prepared to take. So we
Right.
won't do anything unless we've got a clear green light that says, you know what, you've won this bid fair and square, the vendor's happy to take it, and it comes off the market and we exchange contracts now. So again, it doesn't then revert to a, oh, well, you might buy it and you might pull out like you would on a private treaty. It's still sold under auction conditions.
Yeah.
And that means that there is still that security there. But ultimately, if nobody's bid up to where it is, it's, you snooze, you lose. You had your opportunity to buy that property at that price and you didn't. And we often get people who go, well, I haven't been able to go, but you didn't fill out your checks, so you couldn't bid because we didn't have your details, and you've not passed your AML or whatever it might be that says you can't play.
I thought you were just about to go into another analogy there, so I was going to move it on. But looking at the success of the model, do you know what are the average clearance rates in terms of percentage? And I suppose, interestingly, what percentage go on the day, and then with that after sales team?
You know what? I'll be making it up to a
That's
degree,
fine.
but
That's right. You're
yeah.
with Kerfuffle. That's
Yeah,
fine.
what I mean is that I don't have the exact stats of what happened last sale, but I would say we'd easily tie up 10% post sale in most cases. And interestingly enough, in the online space, it's really different. It's
Yeah.
very different because we see more sold prior. That's our terminology, which means that if we set on an online way, we'll typically run a 21-day cycle.
Okay.
And our auction terms give us time to run more than one. And it's normally around trying to flush out that competitive bidding, giving us enough time to market it and get things going. But then we want another bite of the cherry, so we can go back and say, actually, let's look more realistically at the price. Let's give the vendor some evidence to say they might look differently or whatever. So, but in that 21-day cycle, probably we see a third, a third, a third. A third will sell prior. So if it's due to end on the 30th of July, a third of them will be sold prior before that, because we will get an offer and the buyer will say, I will offer this, but I want it now. So we'll have that conversation with the vendor. It's over the reserve. Do they want to let it run, or do they want to accept that offer? So a third of our sales will happen then. A third of it will happen at that little magic moment where we can see those bidder one, bidder two, bidder four, bidder five, bidder two, bidders come back in, and then it's all very exciting. And by the way, we do get excited about it, even over Teams now, where somebody will go, "Oh my God, look, bidder five's come back in. That's ridiculous. We never expected it to get that far," or whatever. And then we'll have a third that end on that, and then a third that will be tied up post, really. So it really does sort of, whereas we see more in that virtual national room, more of it happens then. More of it happens at that sort of, on the nail, on the day, on the rostrum. And we try not to do too much sole prior in that space, because the whole idea is to get those people excited and create that competitive bidding environment. So, there's a danger that if you do too much before, the hammer's there and Andy's on the rostrum, you lose that magic that is created from having a live auctioneer. And that's something that we've seen that grow from strength to strength, even not being in a room. And the amount of viewers and the amount of people who can watch, it is bloody exciting, and it's just a long day from now.
I mean, of course, because you've got a time delineated process, essentially, obviously that increases the stress, and that can be really positive in terms of getting that competitive. I know, looking at the Australian model, and I'm assuming it's the same over here, a large part of the process, once you've actually launched the property, is in terms of setting the vendor expectations correctly with that reserve price. So there's got to be quite a constructive process of feeding back what people are thinking the property is worth, isn't it? Am I right in thinking that would be a a key job of the auction.
Absolutely. And I hate it in from an estate agency perspective. I completely see how we've got into the culture of people often winning listings and instructions because of overvaluing. You know, it, it, who wouldn't? You know, we all want to believe the dream, don't we? You know, and vendors are just, you know, are seduced by that as anybody else. But then what tends to happen, then people go on a journey of disappointment, you know.
Brilliant. That's great. Tell me about it.
Yeah, you know, and that is, you know, well, I have some aspiration for my house to be worth ever so slightly more than the marketplace will dictate it. And then guess what? You know, you're just in bad news central. You know, it's like, oh, by the way, you know, if somebody's offered a really low amount, oh, I'm not going to consider that. Or guess what? I've got nobody viewing it because it's overpriced. So then, you know, you've sold a dream, and guess what? It's going down. That dream's dripping. And, you know, anybody that's ever done, you know, any one of the brilliant industry trainers that says you've got one chance to hit that market, so hit it realistically, because the other way is they're going to go down, you know. So it's getting that bit right. But you know what, that's why if you work in partnership with the likes of SDL, you know, we can be the bad cop that starts to take people on that very realistic journey of what their property is truly worth. And and I would say to somebody, you know, we have agents who I will encourage more and more to sign up at auction at a more market appraisal. So, you know, get it committed early to that auction route. If you know that you're questioning and you're probing of that client means their circumstances suit it, and they're realistic of price and their motivation is there. Alternatively, when you start to send us over a lead or, you know, a referral, or this client might be interested in it, you know, the worst thing we could do, you know, the thing that the greatest risk for you as an estate agent is that
To
we
be all
might,
happy.
no, but the worst thing we can do for you is maybe get you a price reduction, because it might not be right for auction, but we will have had a conversation about them being more realistic on pricing. So, you know, and you can say, damn you, auction department, insulting my client, you know, but the reality of it is that, you know, we can be the bad cop that says, I think you're punching, you know, at what you're looking for now. And we've got, you know, a load of data to support that, and a load of, you know, and that's not just, you know, the data we get from normal comparable evidence. We'll get auction data as well, and lots of other things. And it's just working out how that works for you as an estate agent, of how to position that. And that's what I say, you know what, one size does not fit all. And that's about making sure that you run an auction business in your estate agent with the right level of integrity and voice, the same tone of voice that you have as a business. And that we are not prescribing our way on you, you know. So let's listen to that. Let's show up in the same way you show up. You know, we, honest to God, with some of the changes that we've been through has been vast. So, you know, we had a field sales team, you know, business development managers going out visiting estate agents, and, you know, with varying degrees of engagement and on all sorts of things. You know, the rug's been pulled from that, and the rug's been pulled from those estate agents who, you know, have got very limited ways of turning cash quickly in their businesses, you know. And I just want to say, look, we can help you do that. You know, genuinely, we can help you do it. But if it's not for you, that's all right. If it's not for your vendor, that's all right. Let's close it off nicely, and we've at least explored it. You know, that's at the very least.
You've got a blended model that can help for
Yeah.
different people, and that exposes
Yeah.
you to a different audience, doesn't it? Just
Yeah.
talk us through how it works, just in terms of the financials. What does the, you know, to sign up with SDL? What's the process? Kind of and just give us a brief sort of thing about what that onboarding process looks like for most agents.
Yeah. So what I want, and it's not because I'm lazy, right? Because I can work hard like the next man, but I want a proposition that sings and is something that sometimes people go, well, why wouldn't I do that? You know? So if I don't feel that way about our proposition, then I'd probably want to look at it again. But I want to have the best commercial offering, the best opportunity for growth, all of that. So we're set up for success at the very outset. So there's no fees to to join, to be part of that partnership program at all. The investment is very much down to, we need your time. We need to educate your people. We want you to put a microsite on your website that talks about your auction department. We want you to promote it at market appraisal. But you know what? We will give you all the tools and all the time and energy you need. So, whether that's industry trainers, whether that's, if you want it to be webinar based, we can do that. If you want it to be online, that's fine. If you want us to jump on a Zoom with every one of your new starters or your teams branch by branch, whatever that looks like. So we will agree some sort of launch parameters that says, what can you let us do? So all I want is a set of permissions that says, listen, by the way, you've got a load more people now trying to make you money, but you don't have to pay their salaries, and actually I want to add to your business, not detract from it. So you know what, we're not in a world where you've got BDMs popping in for a coffee or trying to do stock reviews over a busy branch. We can do those remotely. We look at our auction Zoom technology and do that analysis to say, these properties have the greatest propensity to sell, so let's try and talk to those. So we start to get more sophisticated in how we support it. I had one of my colleagues, right, who's been in this game for years in terms of serving and looking after estate agents. And he's worked with us for a couple of years, and he's good, right? He's quality. He knows his stuff. He told me about, and this wasn't that long ago. He went to see one of our brand new partners who we're really excited about. Could not have got more PR or more, more engagement from the owners or everything. And he walked past, and the branch manager hid. So, and literally was like,
I get that a lot.
We don't want you to hide from us. Just tell us what works. That's the point. Please don't hide from us. If it doesn't work for you this way, I'll find a way around it. I'm very committed to us being going. What good looks like for me is very different to what it looks like for you. So and auctions is the most important thing that I talk about every day. But I know, as an estate agent, owner, branch manager, neg, whatever, valuer, you know what? You got 101 bits of action on you. You've been driven in so many different ways. And so we have to be respectful that, they don't wake up thinking about auctions like I do. But actually, if they want us to hold us to account and saying, you know what, I want to bring in 100 grand this year in auctions, then I can make that happen. With the team and the functionality I've got, I can make that happen. And if they only want to do 20 grand, I can make that happen. And if they want to make £500,000, I can make that happen. And it just depends on the level of engagement that they play with, really. You know what? I'm all, I'm a pragmatist that says even God didn't convert everybody. There are going to be people that it's not going to work for and it's not going to be suitable for. And that's all right. We'll bow out as friends. And I'm just as delighted to see our industry growing and my competitors growing in this world. I've got great relationships with them because I think it's really important that we offer this as a choice. And there's room for all of us. Just that's like saying there was only ever room for one corporate national estate agent. Of course there's not. It's and if somebody wants to just launch their own auction department, I can make that happen. Even if they don't do any sales today.
Well, you mentioned Homes Under the Hammer. Has that been, on the whole, a positive experience for you? Is it raised the profile, or does it give vendors an artificial understanding?
I think there's always it's really interesting because there's always an artificial bit that everybody makes millions of pounds and they sell and develop an auction.
Well,
and that's the reality. Yeah. The reality of it is, so from an SDL point of view, it has been brilliant. It's a great showcase of what we do. It's a great way for us to demonstrate our credibility. The checks and due diligence that they have to go through at the BBC to partner with us says a great deal about who we are as a business. So that's like tick central. I take that every day, and we're really proud of that relationship and the people that we talk to and how we make it real for people in their homes. And there are so many people that start on their auction journey on the back of that tease and excitement of what happens. So I will, we would forever be a champion of that. There is a little bit of people getting seduced and caught up in it, so that's why we do say, please read the legal packs, please do your due diligence, don't understand what you're buying, understand, because what happens, and work out what your limits are, and if I ever sit next to you at a charity auction, I can, we'll set some, set some limits of what you're allowed to go to and what you're not. And it is about being sensible and only affording to do what you can afford to do. So, and selling a dream to somebody that's an unrealistic one is not something we want to encourage anyway. But you know what? If you want to invest in property, it is such a fantastic way of doing it. It really is. And if you want to sell property with greater, security, or with some different timelines, then you know what? It's more suitable than people think. I don't want auctions to be a dirty word,
No, I mean, I look. I always obviously encourage everyone to go and have a look at the landing page on Kerfuffle here, and the thing that jumps out of me is, unsurprisingly, in the first statement, with a guaranteed minimum return of £2,500 that's paid to all partner agents just 7 days after sale, and a less than 1% fall through rate. SDL Auctions offers agents a secure revenue stream, doesn't it? Just, I mean, that really is.
Yeah.
It's really.
We're seeing that it drives up people's average fees. It takes away that commodity element that says, you know what, how do you compete in an online space when somebody's trying to do it for $795? And dare I say, being a feeling a little duplicitous about how they make up the money in other areas. So it's really transparent, and that's why we say, sort of, we're seeing a much greater growth in the south now, and that's because we'll take that view that says what's right for you as a partner and what's right for that property. So of course, I would not think that a 4% buyer fee is suitable for a £2.5 million property in Guildford. But actually, £5,000 plus VAT is imminently sensible for £100,000 property or less if you need that commitment. So that's why we work to that minimum. And I work on that basis of going, I want you to get a better fee, and I want you to get it quicker with greater security from an estate agent's point of view. And I want us to have some choice and some expectations about how we get there, really.
Great. And you've been really kind to offer our Kerfuffle members a deal up until, I think it's up till the end of September, this microsite. Just talk us through what that microsite does again, and what its function is for.
So it's not just the microsite, but it's more around that whole extension of your business, of launching your auction business. And a key part of that is having that profile on your own site where you've got an auctions tab, and it feeds through to your auction department in your branding with your properties, or you can choose to market all of the properties in your region that are available for auction. And for some smaller businesses, they want that because they need that to be the showcase. And I don't. We sell and work with our partners. Okay, I don't do any funky stuff with who wins the buyers. It's your listing. It's your listing. You buy it, you sell it, you make the money. There's no funky weird stuff going on. It's your listing, and that's what happens to your listing. And so within that, then there's a link in that microsite through to the bidding platform. So again, it starts to live and breathe as your auction department. And again, that's supported with the right level of marketing material, case studies, all of those things that your valuers should go out with, some examples of properties like yours sold at auction. And so it's not something that's a huge leap to go from, God, I've never thought about selling my property at auction. So it's how to make it accessible. And so for me, it's around turning your auction department in something more tangible. And we'll stump the cost of putting that microsite together for you and getting it live and supporting your launch in all things marketing. But that's just very one tangible thing that we don't expect you to pay for.
That's excellent. Thank you very much for doing this. Encourage everyone, if you are interested, go to the STL auctions on the Kerfuffle website and see a little bit more about that deal and about the company. And if you are interested, there's a nice obvious button on there as well. Louise, thank you. Great to see you as ever, looking so fantastic as well. We'll leave the final word with Paul Morgan, who just asked the question: could STL support an online auction for Simon to lose his hair curtains? So again, thank you for those quality questions there.
I think we need to get you to brave the shave, Mr. Whale. How's that?
Brave the shave. Yeah, okay. That raises further questions that we're not going to deal on the show.
Run away.
Louise, thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Catch
All
up
right.
with you soon. Thank you.
Talk to you
Bye-bye.
soon. Bye.
Cheers.